Now, the bad news is, ready for this? We kind of live in an authoritarian regime. Okay?
What?
Yeah, sorry. I know. And you became a citizen recently.
Oh man.
Sorry.
I was looking forward to all this freedom that I've heard so much about, and now
it's a little bit of the fascist variety, especially with things that are going on. And here in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles area that I call home, they decided to run over a protester. That happened yesterday, and we're going to take a look at that. Shout out to my friends over at the Convo Couch who were on the ground covering that and got some pretty disturbing footage. So there was a Black Lives Matter protest because of what happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd, which let's take a moment of silence for all those shampoo bottles at Target, those innocent shampoo bottles that were being taken out of the store. Hashtag shampoo lives matter. But
the shampoo bottles that went to people that needed the shampoo, probably.
It's not right. It's not right.
No.
I mean, it's just, we really gotta give some thoughts and prayers to all the targets out there and all the rear windshields of cop cars. I mean, we really gotta focus on what's important right now. That's literally how our media is behaving, by the way. It's so, like, you see the headlines, all the headlines coming out of LA from the corporate media. They're all like, oh, these protesters, they broke a windshield after a protester was run over. That one person threw a skateboard after a protester was run over. By the way, that's what actually happened.
What about the life? No.
Yeah. What about the life? The person was run over. And
it's going to be $200 to fix that windshield, you guys.
If that. I mean, it's and by the way, the protest yesterday, totally peaceful protest. They were blocking traffic because that's what a protest does. That's what it was. What's a protest is supposed to do. You're supposed to interfere in the daily activities of things. So people are like, why are people outraged? We're going to tell you why. Oh, okay. So, well, let's watch the video. This is not an easy video to watch, Krish, but we're going to watch it because, that's just how the world works. Here we go. So there's
holy shit!
Oh my God.
Holy shit! Holy shit! Holy shit!
I mean, did Fiorella from the Convo Couch, that's who's taking this video there, by the way, did she really need to swear? I mean, was that an appropriate reaction? Couldn't she have just said, oh, fish sticks?
Gee Willikers.
Gee Willikers, you ran over a protester.
Oh, man.
Shucks.
Yeah.
Good golly, let's go check on him.
What would Jesus do in this situation? And it's probably not use such naughty language.
Right. All right. So let's keep on watching. All right. So let's fast forward. Right now, she had to set the camera down.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you. Oh my God. You can't.
Someone call 911. Call 911.
I can't show that, you guys.
I mean, people are so confused. And at one point in this video, Fiorella even says it herself. She's like, your instinct is to go call the police. And it's like, well, wait a second. The police caused this.
Yeah.
They did this.
Yeah. Call 911. It's like, is there a direct line to like the paramedics? I mean, like, calling the cops isn't going to help. They might run them over again. Like,
it's crazy. Now, last I heard, this guy is in the hospital. They even say so in this tweet. He was taken to the hospital, so hopefully he's okay and he's recovering. And wow, and for everyone, so we're gonna take a look from a different angle here, so people realize that this is what actually happened. Because people are trying to say like, well, they jumped on the car and this and that. Like, no, the cars were approaching, and then that car sped up when it got towards people. That's what happened. So there's no, I mean, if you watch it, it's like, yes, this person, the person driving the car, they knew what they were doing and they were using that car as a weapon. They weren't as deliberate as I'm just going to floor it and run over these people. They weren't going to be that deliberate, but it's like they were approaching people. They sped up. They knew what they were doing. They didn't have to drive through the crowd of people. They didn't have to do that. And we're going to show you how that's the case via images taken from people who were there. And by the way, another disclaimer, these are the angles and the perspectives the corporate media will not show you. And again, shout out to Johnny and Fee and Pasta and everyone else who was on the ground there yesterday, so that we have this perspective of what really went on.
They kicked ass.
They did. All right, so now here's the perspective. The California Highway Patrol, here, I'll pause the video so we can watch it with sound on. The California Highway Patrol accelerated while a protester was on the vehicle. So here they are. They're approaching, see? Now look at everyone else approaching from other angles.
Holy shit.
So they sped up while they approached people. You see it from that angle there where they speed up when they approach people. Now, there's something else that I want to share here. Pasta, sorry, Krish. Pasta from the Convo Couch. He got an angle where it shows you, and I meant to grab that tweet, but I think I didn't have it in my queue. So let me try to find it real quick. He showed you the photos where it's like, okay, this is how. Okay, so it's his pinned tweet, which was really nice of him. He must have known I was going to try to do this. Looking out, it's his pinned tweet. All right, so check this out. So check out these pictures, which you can see it right here. Like, it's very obvious. So there are a bunch of people. There's some people. There's the car. There's other room for them to go around or slowly approach. And so here's what Pasta says. Had this CHP, California Highway Patrol, is what that means. Every time I would see that, I'd be like, what the hell's Chip? Had he stopped his vehicle right there, which he could have, no one would have gotten hurt. Other vehicles stopped. Other vehicles didn't go through things. Other vehicles went around. But this person wanted to drive through the protest. They wanted to drive through, so they started driving through, and they slowly accelerated. If they just would have floored it and ran over people like it was a sport, that might have gotten a little harsher of a reaction. But if they make it look a little subtle, so that this was Ron, intentional.
You know, to be fair, those signs have a lot of glitter on them, and
glitter is dangerous.
It gets everywhere.
Glitter is it gets everywhere, and sometimes it takes up to like 2 showers, 3 before you get all the glitter off.
Yeah, that's a lot. Water's expensive.
Water's expensive.
You can't just be using tax dollars for showers.
Scrubbing it off all willy-nilly. That's, I mean, geesh, man, I am having flashbacks to my prom night where getting that glitter off was just something. I think maybe it wasn't prom, but there was some dance I went to where there was like glitter on my date's dress. And I had like traces of glitter on me for like a month.
I've been through like middle school dances where it's just everything gets glitter on it. And that's scary stuff. So, you know, when you got to get away from glitter, you got to do it fast.
I like how you found a way to humbly brag that you were dancing with girls in middle school. We all know that's what you were really trying to do. You wanted a humble way to slide it in there. Like, you know, in middle school, girls wanted to dance with me, just so you know. I've always been a stud.
I got to show people I'm cool. You know, I'm with it. I know what the kids are into.
So here, there's something else I wanted to share. Another tweet I wanted to share from all this. Because keep in mind, there was somebody who was killed by police in North Hollywood yesterday. There was and Josh Androsky, another friend of the show, points this out. This is attempted murder by the Highway Patrol, which is what it was. Again, we showed you the photos. We showed you those two. Why this Highway Patrol car deliberately went into the protesters. They didn't have to do any of that. It's not like their innocent car was cornered by all these people who were on top of it and refused. That's not what happened.
None of them are armed either. None of the
they're all protesters. Yeah,
none of the protesters are armed. It
was a totally peaceful protest.
Yeah.
The only and if you can even call it an act of aggression, I don't think it's fair to even call it an act of aggression because someone threw a skateboard into a windshield. It was after someone was run over. Somebody was run over.
It's these there it is, and it's these things where they're like, oh man, they threw what is that in reaction to? It's and it's always, if you look at the pattern of how all these things escalate, the cops or any sort of point of authority are the ones that instigate the violence first, right? Like this is an act of violence. You did not have to drive through any of those people, but you did. And then what does the media focus on is, oh boy, somebody threw a skateboard in the back of a cop car, but never address the initial point of violence to begin with.
Look at the headline right here in this video that Josh is sharing. It's like, oh, it turns violent. Black Lives Matter protest turns violent. Like, no, a highway patrol car ran somebody over.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't fail to mention that the Black Lives Matter protest was a peaceful protest that was met with violent actions from the police. And it's the same thing in Minneapolis, is they're all peaceful protesters, and then the police start lobbing an endless supply of rubber bullets and tear gas. And what do these people expect these protesters to do? Is just kind of sit back and be like, guys, let them keep firing. They have a lot of feelings they have to express, and rubber bullets are the only way they can do it. Like, it's such a
when are we gonna listen to what the cops have to say? When are we gonna? How many innocent people do they have to kill before we finally start just hearing them out?
Yeah.
How many innocent unarmed people do they have to kill without any repercussions whatsoever?
Duke, if we hug the police, will they stop killing minorities? Do you think if we all just collectively hug these macho militaristic police,
I think we need to, and yeah, to put a period on Josh's tweet here, he points out this is the same day the LAPD shot a man dead in North Hollywood. Now, allegedly, that guy was wielding a sword or something like that. You can find other footage where there was a guy wielding an axe. Police were able to apprehend the guy and not shoot him to death. But apparently in North Hollywood, that wasn't the case. They had to shoot this guy to death. And again, that's allegedly. We're still waiting for more to unfold there. But yeah, this is beyond ridiculous. And it's the point where it's like, we can't, whenever somebody says like, well, just a couple bad apples, it's like, just stop talking. Just stop talking. That argument, it makes zero sense. It never did. I mean, that's the equivalent of saying, hey, there's an E. coli outbreak and it affected all of our lettuce supply. And then someone takes out a shred of lettuce that goes, well, this one's fine. This one's not infected. It's just some bad shreds. It's just like, no. It's a systemic problem.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with law enforcement. It's a systemic problem. I don't care that you have a neighbor who's been a cop for 30 years in Podunksville, wherever, and has never hurt anybody and is a nice guy at the community picnics. That's not the point. We're talking about a systemic problem, and a systemic problem needs a systemic solution. The systemic solution being this job is absolutely ridiculous. It's insane that it even exists. It's insane that it's like, okay, so you're expected to do all these things. You're expected to be able to de-escalate a situation where maybe a person is armed, maybe they're not, and they're, maybe in some cases they're severely mentally ill or whatever it may be. You're expected to know how to handle that, but you're able to use deadly force whenever you want with no repercussions. And in many cases, you weren't screened properly. We have open members of the KKK who get badges and guns. It happens all the time.
Open members of the military that haven't gone through any sort of PTSD treatment.
Right. Haven't gone through anything, likely have serious PTSD. And
none of the training is about de-escalation either. All their training is about how to aggressively deal with these situations, which not all situations need that level of aggression. But when you're trained to be a hammer, every problem is a nail.
Exactly. Exactly.
And there is no reform within the police system. And
No.
like you said, you might know your neighbor is a cop who's very nice at all the picnics, but very likely if this person is a good cop that does their job, that's engaged in the neighborhood, they will be fired within 2 years, or they'll leave the force, which is kind of what happens to these good cops, right? Is they get pushed out of the force, or they get bullied out of the force because they aren't gonna put their knee on somebody's neck for 4.5 minutes,
because it's a systemic disease. I mean, I had a guy who told me that. Man, this happened years ago, actually in Pittsburgh, where I was having a conversation with this guy who used to be a cop, and he was like, I mean, I could tell he was a genuinely good dude, and he's like, dude, you might not even believe me, but I really did. I wanted to be a police officer because I genuinely did want to serve and protect.
Right.
And I was like, I do believe you. And I'm like, look, man, I don't deny the existence of people like you, like people with genuine intentions. I just think that there's a systemic problem going on. And I feel like people like you are in the minority, like I feel like people like you, like maybe you're 1 in every 4 cops. And his response to me was, and this was years ago, his response to me was, you're being way too generous. He's like, I'm much more of a smaller percentage than that, believe me, because I had to walk away from all this. And he's like, and I have stories that could make your, I have stories that can make your skin crawl. Like, he's like, I just do. And, we didn't go into like any significant stories because he's like, dude, I just can't right now. I'm not, like, I'm just trying to have a good time. And I'm like, I get it. But yeah, I mean, he basically told me like, it's like all the things that we talk about when it comes to issues like this. Like, it's a systemic problem, and it's not gonna, and of course I want to see, I'm glad all these cops were fired in Minnesota. They should be in jail for murder because they murdered someone, which that's another interesting thing here. The verbiage that you see the media using all the time when it comes to these issues: looters,
right,
and violent protester,
right,
rioters. You see that being used. You know what you don't see being used? Murder.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that word being used in the past couple days when it comes to what happened in Minnesota. You don't see murder being used, and you don't hear police brutality being uttered. Isn't that interesting?
No,
you don't hear either of those.
No.
It was a murder. They murdered this man. They murdered him
on camera.
Like, well, and some of them watched it.
Yeah, one of them stood guard. While his buddy was doing that, and I was like, how do you get away with that? And had I not researched this, like, I wouldn't, I would be far more like, this is, I just would be so confused. But there's a reason why cops like this don't go up against cops like this. And it's because there's been one police strike in the history of America, which was in 1919. And the striking police got completely fucked over by the Boston mayor, the Massachusetts governor, and the president, all ganged up on them. It was like pandemonium. And basically, again, much like any strike, the cops in 1919 in Boston were basically asking to be treated like people. They wanted better hours and better pay, and to be and like a better sleep area, right? Because they all had to kind of share quarters, so they just wanted like a cleaner facility for it. They wouldn't recognize the union. They pushed back. So when most of the police force didn't show up to work, they called the National Guard. They armed Harvard students and turned them into a militia, which then turned into what we saw in Minneapolis. It turned into a riot because people were like, "Oh, we don't have to listen to these kids." And then, so the end result is the cops didn't win, but there was an unemployment problem with veterans, right? Like, veterans that came out of World War I didn't have a job, so they gave the veterans the cops jobs. They fired all the striking police officers. They gave the veterans the cops jobs, and then they gave the veterans the pay raise that the cops were asking for, and the better conditions that the cops.
And some of these veterans, likely had severe PTSD.
Yep.
Likely, weren't equipped to handle certain, and so the system began.
Yep.
Wow.
And we've never seen another police strike again because it was a lesson from those on high, which is don't Don't question us. Don't.
And they turned the working classes against each other.
Yep.
To try to get what they wanted.
Yep.
Wow. It's almost like it's a system in place, Chris.
It's almost and that's why it's like you see that that the one officer standing guard for the other one to commit murder. It's like it's wild. It's like it goes all the way back to the early part of the 1900s where we saw all this, right? They're not the police force is not designed to protect and serve like anybody. It's supposed to it's put into place specifically to protect and serve like these rich oligarchs is basically what it is. And that's another thing you won't see, right? Is like the media will not talk about how there is this problem where there are more cops put into place to protect inanimate objects than people in the community.
Yeah.
No response from the media about that.
Well, because the media plays the violin for those inanimate objects.
Right. Yeah.
They'll talk about the poor targets, the poor windshields, the poor, I mean, there was even a headline out of LA where it's like, again, after a protester was run down and we just saw all those ankles. Yeah. I don't see how you can actually see the whole thing play out and say it's anything but, like even still, there were headlines like they broke a windshield. They broke a windshield.
This is the same thing.
You mean because someone was run over?
Yeah.
Because they ran over somebody? Someone threw a skateboard because someone got run over?
It's the same people that bitch about the Target stuff, right? And it's like, oh, you shouldn't do that to Target, but have said nothing when Target is making their own employees stitch their masks or give them barely any hazard pay, cut hours, and then make people work overtime and then yell at them for working. Like they treat their employees like garbage.
Well, we're realizing just how ridiculous and brutal our entire system. Well, we knew this, but now we're really seeing it head on. Because, I mean, McDonald's is being brutal beyond comprehension. Target, Instacart, Amazon, all of them. But you know what else we're realizing? We're realizing who the essential workers are. We're even calling it essential workers. And it's not the fat cats at Wall Street. It's the people who are keeping the grocery stores open so people can get food. People who are keeping the pharmacies open so people can still get their medicine. Those are the essential workers. And I mean, dude, our only way out of this thing's a general strike.
I agree.
It's the only way. And that's hard to do because we have a system that's set up so that a lot of people and the people who are on the front lines right now, a lot of them are in situations where they're like, well, I'm a paycheck or two away from going under. And I can't strike. It's man.
Well, so I mean, the kind of the hopeful ray of light for that is things like mutual aids. Like I just had Eleanor Goldfield on my podcast, and she was talking. She's very involved in the mutual aid community in Washington, D.C., but there's mutual aid communities everywhere where it's just regular people like you and me helping out other regular people like you and me. So if, like, let's say you're having struggle with rent, but there's somebody 2 blocks from you that not only got to keep their job, is telecommuting, but got a raise. This mutual aid community can go, hey, can you talk to Ron because I think there's some issues, and they would go, yeah, of course, and they would help you with rent or groceries or whatever you. It's just the mutual aid community, and that is a big revolution that can just help people, and working in tandem with strikes can alleviate the stress of that, right? But to me, I think we get closer to a general strike the more we see like healthcare workers start striking against these big hospitals that. Like there was a story that came out earlier this month about University of Washington cafeteria workers striking because they weren't getting the proper protections. And even when
and how horrifying is it that the people who are making food aren't given proper protections?
Right.
Not only is that insanely dangerous for them, it's insanely dangerous for everyone else too. And especially, it's like, where are they making food at? Of all a hospital,
right?
Like a hospital, like a hospital. So it's like the doctors and nurses who, guess what? We need them. We need them big time. Like they're not getting. I mean, it's just this is unbelievable. We are a capitalism death cult.
Yeah. It really is. It's you know, like you keep hearing all these people that are like, but the markets need to open. It's like, but maybe the markets
sound insane. I mean, yeah, like you watch these CNBC thing, which I see these segments.
Oh my God.
Like, and the only reason I see these segments is because, like, you know, Jimmy sends them to me because he wants me to write jokes for him. But it's like they're so insane where it's like, dude.
Yeah.
The market.
We got to get those markets back. It's just like, oh my God, relax.
Like, in the name of the free market and the gun and the holy capitalism, amen.
Yeah. Like, it's so crazy. But it is like, that is the religion in this country, right? Like the religion isn't Christianity. The religion is capitalism.
See, what does Glenn Beck and his friends think about that? You know, I mean, like we got to start, we got to start like telling everybody on the far right, like, hey, you want to say this is a Christian nation? We got some bad news for you.
Yeah.
There's actually a new God people are subscribing to, and it's not your guy. So
it's the president of the Fed.
What do you think? You should be angry at capitalism because he's taken some of the spotlight away from Jesus. It's like instead of a crucifix, they're seeing like a stock market chart. That's the new crucifix.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
That's the hypocrisy of all of it too. It's just like these good Christians that are listening to people that are like, the economy needs to be open. And it's just like, wait a minute. If you read your book, when was the only time that Jesus like got super pissed and started beating the shit out of people?
He was mad at the bankers because they needed to reopen the economy.
Yeah, they had to.
The bankers were like, "There's a disease," and Jesus was like, "I don't give a shit. I heal lepers. Open the economy." Isn't that's what happened? I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe he was mad about something else. I don't know.
It's like I like how they just kind of walk over that whole thing where it's just like, oh yeah, remember when Jesus beat the shit out of bankers for like defrauding regular working class people? And they're like, yeah, but you're misinterpreting that. Am I? like the part of the book where it's just like, and Jesus showed up and he punched a banker in the face. Like,
you know, man, I have a lot of mixed feelings about that whole thing because it's like, I've read the Bible cover to cover.
Yeah.
Because, you know, YOLO. And I do, like, there are some parts, there are those moments where you're just like, everyone who worships this guy, did you read about what he actually says here? Like, did you see all this? But then the other side of it too, though, if you really read in between the lines, there's a lot of that book where the big theme is, hey, poor people, don't act out of line or you won't go to heaven. So it's like, I mean, I feel like, and you know, I guess technically I'd be considered an agnostic, depending on how you define your terms. I think in some ways I'm an atheist because some people, they're like, well, an atheist just means you don't acknowledge a theist, like hence atheist. So if you don't have a theist in your life, you're an atheist, which by that definition, I am an atheist. I don't acknowledge any God. So, you know, I'm technically an atheist. But if your definition of atheist is, well, I know there's nothing out there. Well, I don't say that. I don't know one way or another. I don't think there is. And I believe there isn't. And I take comfort in that belief. You know, like some people, they take comfort in believing in a God. And I respect that. I take comfort in the belief that there isn't one. I look around and I see how 2/3 of the world is starving to death. I see how, you know, humanity is going. And I take comfort in the belief that there's not some invisible man in the sky going, well, I created all this, but I also created all this pain because if you don't believe in me, it hurts my self-esteem. I take comfort in the belief that that guy doesn't exist.
Yeah, I do too. I've been like the one thing that like my mom likes to talk about is religion and Hinduism and stuff.
Oh, you do it with your parents? Why would you do that?
Well, it's the only time I can actually have a conversation with them. But
see, my family's Catholic, and we just don't go there anymore. I mean, we're just let's just not.
Well, I do. I only do it with my mom.
right.
But there's stories, right? And it's funny is like she'll tell me the story, and then I'll be like, so the moral of the story is basically like the king is bullshit, and she's like, well, and I was like, okay, all right, like she just doesn't want to come into that lane. But that's the thing is like what we're seeing, where it's like, oh, the people have the power, the people make the determination. All of this stuff is like that's in religion. It's just the people that write the book reinterpret it differently. Like you said with the Bible, is there's a lot of things that say like, oh yeah, if you don't, Hinduism has the same thing. It's like if you don't listen to this God and fall in line, then bad things will happen to you. But then there's a whole nother story, which the whole point of it is to choose your own path, right? To like make decisions for yourself. Like Hinduism as a philosophy teaches you to be independent, but also serve your community. So there are these conflicting messages, and it's like it just depends on who is reading them and who's writing them. There's so many hypocrisies within religion, and when you point it out, like whenever I point that out to my mom, is like that's when the conversation ends, right? It's like you can't. It's like that's whenever she's like, I gotta go cook some shit, and I was like, yep, all right, I'm gonna go watch Star Trek then.
Like you do.
Yeah,
like you do.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you wanna know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you wanna know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your